Hello and welcome to our local edition of the Press Review for today, Tuesday, the 27th of February 2018. And I'm happy to have with me political analyst as well as international law expert, Ms. Eissa, to comment on the news. Good morning. Well, we will be starting first with اليوم السابع newspaper, from which we read that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi called on all citizens and businessmen to donate to the Tahya Masr Fund, as the existing fund can help finance the development of Sinai, which is a national security issue for Egypt. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said in a press statement on Monday that the president clarified during his visit to Sinai on Sunday that the comprehensive development process in Sinai has already started since 2014 and will continue till 2022. Now, here there are two things. The first is the importance of contributing to the development of the Egyptian economy, which I'd like first to start with first, and of course the security of Egypt. But let's start first with the press statement of Ambassador Bassam Radi based on President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's directives.
Just divert our attention on Sinai is very essential. And I've always wondered why an area like Sinai is abandoned like this. For various reasons, it has a historical background, it has a religious background. If you paid more attention into polishing Sinai to be attractive for tourism, it will be a focal point, not just for certain specific caliber of people, of tourists who will be interested to come. You have a historical background which comes with the pharaohs and Egyptian history, and you have the religious background, and also you have a very interesting background. You can speak about the history of the battle on Sinai and the war. However, you cannot make an area attractive for tourism to generate income without having it secure. For instance, recently we had for months ago a problem with Russia over security, even though the Russian tourists always like to come to Egypt, but because the country itself banned security-wise on Egypt, we had a struggle that was recently removed. Same-wise scenario for Sinai. We can invest and do a lot of radical measures to make it attractive and invest financially in this area, which have very high potential. That's breaking my heart. It's been abandoned for that long. However, without security, everything will be like tossed in the air. That's why I think we need to secure the area security-wise, and I think the public needs to know we're securing it for 1, 2, 3, an action plan. They need to see an outcome that's very successful out of this in order to tolerate the security measures that's happening.
Yes, and actually the announcement itself came as the president was inaugurating the East of the Suez Canal Counterterrorism Command itself, and that would lead us to talking about comprehensive Operation Sinai 2018. How can we support the armed forces in its endeavor to combat terrorism?
There are several areas where you can support the government in combating terrorism. First of all, Sinai is a very dynamic area because we're not just fighting one type of terrorist. We're attacked internally and externally, and we have Israel and we have hidden agendas. There's definitely conspiracies here when it comes to this area. So how can we help the government? First with support. Supporting the government, it was being done. Financial support, moral support, any type of simple support to the huge one will make a difference. Because like President Sisi always says one man's heart. So one man's heart action needs the entire society to have the same perspective.
Yes, and we'll be moving to the cabinet, and actually Prime Minister Sharif Ismail headed on Monday the Higher Council of Energy, according to Nile News, from which we read that the Prime Minister attended, and a meeting was attended by Ministers of Electricity, Military Production, Investment and International Cooperation, Petroleum, Trade and Industry, Planning and the Public Business Sector. The meeting stressed the importance to continue efforts to encourage new industries and overcome the obstacles which face all manufacturers. How do you see that?
First, there's more than one point has been highlighted in this news. One that I'd like to talk about first is the public investments. We need to encourage this area because when it comes to private investments, we've already had the laws, and it's on the right track and waiting for the outcome to start gaining its outcome recently. However, we have a problem with the public investment. My personal opinion, the public investment need a push from the private sector, because the private sector is more concerned with profit and gain. So maybe if we have a law that can cooperate the two together, then this one can give the other one a push that's needed. They will work hand in hand together. This will be very beneficial for the government. And for the bank loans, it's actually a double-edged sword, because they encourage for investment in bank loans. However, it backfires with the severe penalties that come afterwards. But we need to come with the mentality to secure both. The person who takes the investment loan for the bank, and the same person, the government, that needs to get its money back. Without having so harsh measures, the fact there's very hard consequences when it comes to bank loans make people panic. It's not a mean of encouragement, it's mean of making someone set back their ideas.
Yes. And moving to the international and Arab front, where from also Nile News we read that Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri participated on Monday in the meeting that took place in Brussels between the foreign ministers of the Arab Six-Party Committee on Jerusalem and the foreign ministers of the European Union. The party includes Egypt, Palestine, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, and the Arab League General Secretariat. Now, this is another important meeting, because still the United States is insisting on moving the U.S. Embassy to from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem by mid-May, and that's a decision that has been banned not just throughout the Arab world, but by the international community, because it's going to affect the peace process. So how do you see that and the importance of this meeting?
When it comes to this case in particular, I like to think that things are simple, but we like to complicate it. First of all, what's very promising with this meeting is the word European Union. The European Union might not be very effective action-wise, but it's very effective with naming and shaming. It puts a huge political pressure, especially the European Union, on Israel and the United States. So the fact that the 6 countries are going to work hand in hand with the European Union, it's very promising. That it's not going to change something, but it's going to make things more complicated. However, the case itself for the transfer of the embassy, we can look at it from different perspectives. International law perspective, it's illegal. It's not constitutional. Why? Because it's a sovereign state. The case of Israel and Palestine, the peace process and the stability in the region happens under one key word: coexistence. The two states have to coexist together. What Israel is doing is not coexistence, it's coming on the expense of Palestine and taking illegal lands and building in them. And on the other hand, the US, what's doing, it's only making a fuss. Here's the thing, if any government did that, nothing would happen. The fact that the United States is a hegemonic country with huge influence, anything can happen, can have a magnitude influence, that's why it's getting this attention. But legal-wise, from the law perspective, international law, it is not legal, it's not constitutional, because the key word is recognition. If one country recognizes a certain state and the other does not, then it's failed. It's not constitutional. But the fact that this state is such influential, it's the United States of America, that's why everyone is so concerned.
Yes, indeed, and we hope that it gets resolved. And actually, on the parliamentary front, we have the Speaker of the House of Representatives visiting the United Arab Emirates, and that we read from Al-Yom Al-Saba newspaper, where Speaker of the House of Representatives, Dr. Ali Abdel and his accompanied delegation continued their visit to the United Arab Emirates. And the parliamentary delegation met with the Abu Dhabi Crown Prince and Vice Supreme Commander of the United Arab Emirates Armed Forces, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and they praised the special bilateral relations and the continuous coordination between the two brotherly countries. This is another important thing, the meeting on the parliamentary level between the different Arab countries. How do you see that?
I think it's very promising. However, we need to think of maximum benefit. First of all, the news highlights how Egypt is such a key player, and the presence of Egypt in the Middle East arena have such a huge influence. However, when it comes to Emirates, it's a very booming area, and Emirates, we're having very good relation with them. We need to think of like what Dr. Saharnas always does, mutual benefits on the investment wise, and also in the economic perspective. We need to use this, and for the parliamentary, we need to share experiences. First of all, Egypt parliamentary and how the hierarchy of the institution inside of Egypt, the dynamic is completely different than the Emirates. But we can benefit from them through this good ties and brotherhood as claimed in the article, to use it in our benefit, economic-wise and investment. It's going to be a very promising platform.
Well, we hope so, and we have so many news with limited time, so we will be moving to Al-Ahram newspaper, from which we read that the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Federica Mogherini, demanded on Monday to implement the United Nations-backed ceasefire in Syria immediately, as fresh strikes on rebel-held enclave of eastern Ghouta continue. How do you see that, and how do you see the situation in Syria?
The situation actually is getting me very confused. It's such a double-edged sword, because when you listen to the United Nations from the humanitarian perspective, they need to cease fire. This makes sense. But from the other side, they're fighting terrorism. This is a war zone. So they need to cause more casualties in order to win the war, because they're fighting terrorists. But on the other hand, from the humanitarian perspective, there isn't any safe zone. There are a lot of innocent people that are dying. And if you cease fire, they're going to lose more land, more grounds, and they're giving more space for the rebel to come in. On the other hand, there's lots of innocent lives are going to ice. I think the problem here is stubbornness. Both sides are being very stubborn. We need a bit of compensation from each side. We need a compensation from Russia and the active war zone area to make a zone that is secure by the United Nations cooperation in order to get the peaceful idea to secure innocent lives. Innocent lives are being lost. This is inhumane. It's not acceptable, even if you're fighting terrorism. You need to be fair for both sides. And it's not, sometimes they say it's war casualties, it's sacrifice you make to war. No. Human lives are sold as with value, and if they're innocent, it's completely unjustifiable to do this. So I think we need justification and a bit of compensation from both sides. United Nations doesn't bind by all their conditions, and the other hand, also Russia and Syria doesn't be too stubborn. They need to find a middle ground.
Yes, and moving to the United States, and from Al-Watan newspaper, we read that the U.S. Supreme Council on Monday dealt a setback to U.S. President Donald Trump, requiring his administration to maintain protections he has sought to end for hundreds of thousands of immigrants brought illegally into the United States as children. This is another hit to Donald Trump and his administration and his decisions, where it seems that he's being, in a sense, being, let's say that they are saying that he's not doing the right job. And now everybody is attacking him for his decisions, in a sense. So how do you see that?
I think he's being very reckless and very short-sighted. First of all, let's be realistic. If the president comes, he comes with his own fresh perspective. If he has a new perspective and a new rule he wants to apply, fine. He's been elected, and this is the United States nation luck with such a president. However, my concern is you cannot interfere with an ongoing course of a previous law. That doesn't make sense, because the outcome is in process. You can start fresh and new. But again, lives and people values and plans and someone's promise that has been made cannot be trashed because someone came out of the room with a different perspective. Of course, new president, new perspective. Start a new law, start a new page, but don't go back and adjust something that is in action. It's an ongoing process with those immigrants. So it's completely unfair, and it needs to be protected. Any rules has to do with immigrants, people's lives, destiny, future, needs to be protected by the American Constitution. This is what I think they should do in the future, and they should learn from what's happening with President Trump.
Well, I think that he has, in a sense, being criticized for his humanitarian aspect, where his approach to the various human rights, whether in Palestine or domestically now, he is really taking what is being considered as wrong decisions. But unfortunately, the time is up. So I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you very much, a political analyst as well as international law expert, Ms. Eissa. Thank you very much for this interview. And that brings us to the end of our local press review. But stay tuned for more coming up on Nile TV International.